Ladies and mostly gentlemen, thanks for tuning in today. I have the next part of the DYU 12-inch electric mini folding bike review and disassembly. So today what we're going to do is start out first with a little bit of ride to see how it handles. So we're going to take it to Dallas.
Hi, I'm Dallas. John has a broken leg. So, this feels pretty tight. We put 3/4 of a charge on it, and that's the full speed takeoff right there. As you can tell, we're still gaining speed though. We're gaining speed. I don't know a top speed on this. It's a little bit of an uphill right now, but let's turn around, check these brakes. Oh, that's solid right there. All right. Optimal position for max speed. Oh, we're gonna do a fly by the camera here so you can see this massive amount of, yeah. All right, well, I gotta be honest with you, the frame feels pretty rigid for being a fold in half frame. This is pretty good. It's tight, it doesn't feel wobbly or wonky coming straight out of the box. We've tightened all the basic stuff like the wheels and the pegs, so it shouldn't be falling apart on me right now, but it doesn't feel like a cheap piece of junk. I'm 225 pounds. Let's be real, I'm 230, 235. It's sluggish to take off. It would probably be a little bit better with a full charge, but it's not terrible. The brakes are pretty good. I'm very impressed for as cheap as this was. So yeah, aluminum frame's light, feels pretty balanced when you pick it up. When this is folded down, it's a little bit more balanced, but I mean, I can see how this would be pretty good get around at like a festival or, you know, in inner city somewhere when you're wanting to get around at an event. Oh, and do not forget about this amazing feature right here. Hang on. Yeah.
All right, so you just saw Dallas's ride, and we got some feedback from him. He weighs about 225 pounds, which I think is probably about the average size of a viewer, and the bike was a little underwhelming on power compared to what we build in the shop. To give you a little bit of perspective, what I build is usually about 750 watts of power, and this one is rated at 250 watts. So I decided to tear into it and see exactly why it's rated for 250 watts. Some of the other feedback that Dallas had though was that the bike frame actually felt nice and rigid. The rear brakes were plenty and it didn't feel that scary riding it around, but it wasn't quite on a full charge, and he said it felt like about 12 miles an hour. Looking at it, I would say probably about 12 miles an hour. So they claim about 20 miles an hour tops on this, maybe on a full charge, going downhill with a little bit of wind behind your back. That's usually how electric bikes are rated. And once you get the surface charge knocked off of it, it's probably going to be somewhere around 15 miles an hour and then steadily declining as you go. But it sounds like this is actually true 250 watt. So let's look into it and see why it's 250 watts. Knowing motors, I can tell you that this rear hub is more than likely capable of a lot more than 250 watts. Just the heft of the hub motor actually tells us a lot about how much power it'll take. But that is pretty standard. And if we look at the hub motor, it may give us a little bit of inclination as to what the watt rating is, but no, it doesn't give us any numbers that maybe tells us, 500 watt or whatever. But really the only rating on a motor is whether it overheats or not. So it depends on how heavy you are, depends on how big the hills are, depends on how much your tires are pumped up to the actual load that a motor will take. So that'll have to be maybe for a future vid where I hot rod the controller and see how much power we can get. But if we look inside on this bike, we can see all the beautiful guts, all the fiddly bits of this bike. And what I can tell you is that I'm actually pretty impressed with the quality of the components. So let's go piece by piece on here. This is the battery. Hopefully you know what a battery is. If you don't, tell me down below. But this battery is indeed put together with 20 cells like I thought. So it is made of 18 650 cells. It even says on the side, made by hanipower.com, H-A-N-I power.com. And it is actually rated for 6 amp hours. So surprise, surprise, the battery on the inside of the bike is actually what the manufacturer is telling us that the bike is rated for. A lot of times they'll kind of fudge those numbers, so it'll be like a 5.5 amp hour, and they'll call the bike a 6 amp hour bike. But whatever. This time they didn't. That's pretty cool. So it's, yeah, just made a regular 18 650 cells. It looks like we got, probably 3 rows in here, and then a battery management system shoved in here somewhere. I'm not going to take that apart because a lot of times you take apart a battery, you can't get it back together. But I would assume that we could probably pull a little bit more from this battery. And why would I assume that? Because it has really nice silicone leads coming off of it right here. And they look to be about 16 gauge. Ooh, it even says it on the side in really tiny letters. But it's nice silicone jacketed wire, which means that you can actually get the wire pretty hot and it's not going to melt the jacket off. Yes, 16 gauge wire going through an XT60 connector. That is really cool. So here's our connector. It looks, it doesn't have gold plating on it, so it's not the best XT60 connector, but as long as we don't get water inside, we'll be cool. Do you run XT60s on your e-bike or on your RC car? You probably do, because I do. And a lot of people do. I think it's the most popular plug right now. But let us know down in the comments what you run on your e-bike or on your RC car. On my big e-bikes, I run XT90s now. They're pretty cool. So next up, we had the battery. Now we have this little control board up here. This actually turns on our lights. It's like, your interface, so to speak. And not really much to say about it. It has a couple MOSFETs on there, little transistors to turn things on and off like the lights. Probably has the logic for our dumb horn to turn the lights on. This is 3 times and hey, now we get the lights on. And our rear blinks maybe? Or no, our rear blinks when you hold the brake down. That's what you get. That's what you get. What do you get, YouTube? Let me know in the comments. All right, on with it. So the next thing we have, and arguably the most important piece of any e-bike, besides your motor and the rider not being an idiot, is the controller. So this controller has nice silicon jacketed wires going all the way through it, on all the phase wires, on the power wires. It's actually a nicely constructed little piece of kit. There are no bad solder jobs on here. And on top of that, it uses ST electronics or ST microchip, whatever they call themselves these days, ST brand name MOSFETs inside. That was actually a surprise. It's 6 TO220 size MOSFETs, and that's pretty typical for any e-bike or something this size. Now, if we went with a nicer MOSFET in there, like I don't even remember what they are. I'm not even going to try. If we went with the nicer MOSFET, we could easily pull about 35 amps through this controller. Right now, it's only set up for 7 amps, and more than likely, these are either 20 or 25 amp FETs. So we don't want to push it too hard, or else it's going to overheat, and then, you got to fire underneath your legs. And the last place that we want to fire is right in between our legs. So I'm probably not going to modify this one. I say that, but I might. Let's take a look and see if it's modifiable. A lot of times these are going to know what amperage is going through it because of a little bitty shunt. And what we can do is add a little bit of material to the shunt to freak the controller, and it will think that the amperage is lower, and so we can actually get more power from it. But we got to find that shunt, and I'm not actually seeing one on here. So, yeah, maybe. All right, so this has, you may not be able to see it, a little surface mount resistor right there, and that is most likely our amperage shunt. I'm probably not going to end up modifying this controller just because I plan to put a front hub motor on this one and I can add power that way. But case being, if I wanted to modify this guy, there is usually a way to do it, and it would be beefing up the shunt. So maybe that'll be a future video. As it sits, I think this will do just fine for what I want it to. Maybe play some disc golf on it, help me rehab my knee, and still be able to play disc golf, because I'm probably not going to be able to walk a whole lot of distance at first without getting tired. So I can just hop on this thing and go. This would also be excellent for anybody looking for the last mile sort of vehicle. I call these trunk monkeys. I don't know why, but it seems very suitable for the size of them. And so let's say you live 15 miles away from work. You can drive, a mile or two away from your business, and then pull this out of your trunk, ride the last little bit, maybe save some parking, probably save some traffic depending on your city. A lot of people commute like that, and if you do, let me know in the comments. I used to go to college here in town, and that was perfect, because finding any sort of parking on campus is pretty much is just nearly impossible or impractical because you got to pay a lot of money. So what I did is I actually built my own trunk monkey. It was a lot more powerful than this. I still have it. It goes a lot faster than this, but this thing was only $300. I ended up spending about $1,000 on my custom built one that looks like crap. So overall, I would say this is actually a really good value. $300, you can save that in parking on a year. You know, so if you could use this to go the last like extra mile or two, even 5 miles, because this probably has a 10-mile range, then obviously this is going to be a good deal for you. And after looking on the inside and seeing the quality of components, no bad solder joints, silicon jacketed wires, name brand components on the inside. They have a big enough power cap on there even. I mean, everything on this bike says that they actually know what they're doing and they probably don't want returns or fires in between your legs. So overall, 2 thumbs up. I don't know about any star rating on this one because I mean, it's a $300 electric bike. So what do you expect? From what I expected, this would actually be a 10 out of 10 and I think we could get a pretty good value out of it at that. So I don't know, maybe you have one of these guys and you have some other thoughts on it. Maybe you have one that caught fire between your legs. If so, let me know in the comments and I will definitely take that into consideration before I go riding this with flammable pants on. So, John Holmes is going to sign out on this one. Thanks for tuning in today. Have a good one.